If money makes your ADHD brain freeze like a deer in headlights, there's a reason for that. Money is a topic that collides with multiple ADHD pain points at once: impulsivity, emotions, self-worth, avoidance, just to name a few. And at the start of the new year, that collision hits even harder because before you've even looked at the numbers, you're already bracing yourself for the impact of the holidays on your finances. But when you replace self-blame by curiosity, you can move from "I'm bad with money" to "that explains why I feel like I'm losing the battle." Welcome to the show. If you've ever thought you are bad with money because your financial track record points to a long list of failures, this episode is going to change how you see yourself. This episode is going to change how you see yourself. By the end, you won't believe you suck at money. You'll understand how ADHD actually shows up through money, and you'll have a new, more empowering narrative to replace the one you've been repeating for years. One of the reasons most ADHDers struggle with money isn't because they don't care. They struggle because money triggers multiple ADHD aspects at once, especially in January. When the credit card statement shows up, your stomach drops. You feel the urge to avoid looking. And that familiar voice kicks in. I screwed up again. If this is how you feel right now, it's not because you're irresponsible. It's because January has a way of turning up the dial on guilt and shame until you understand what it is actually activating in an ADHD brain. I'm your host, Zarena, ADHD and money coach, unapologetic rebel, and Gen X ADHDer. I used to believe being good with money was something I'd never, ever figure out until I understood what money was really colliding with in my ADHD brain. And that's exactly what we're unpacking together today. Here's what's actually happening. Money isn't just about dealing with numbers and being good at managing it. This is true for anybody. But for an ADHD brain, money often shows up carrying a lot more because of the unique challenges we face. It activates emotional memory. It activates safety. It activates self-trust. And when too many of those get activated at the same time, the nervous system does what it's designed to do. It protects you. That protection can look like shutdown or avoidance or freezing, which ultimately impacts your behavior. It's not that you don't care, or maybe you don't and want to. The thing is that it's hard to care when your system is overloaded. So if you've ever wondered why money feels heavier than it should, this is partially why. When a protection mechanism kicks in, it automatically selects what is the best way to respond. That information is stored in your subconscious. So it's been identified, it's there, it's in the data that the mind will pick from, and it's been on repeat for years. And with both money and ADHD, there's a huge load to untangle for things to become easier. But it's totally doable when you know what's going on. And the reason why this matters is because addressing ADHD challenges through money creates a ripple effect, a positive one. We'll go more in depth later on, but for now, let's focus on what happens when money triggers ADHD. Money activates shame, identity, and even fear all at the same time, leading to behaviors like impulsive buying because you need a way or you automatically are looking for a way to relieve the discomfort or the pain. ADHD brains are especially sensitive to threat and overload, and money can feel like a threat to stability, competence, and self-worth. So when your system hits its limit or there's too much friction, the ADHD brain's response is to shut down, and it can show up in many ways, such as a motivation issue. The great news is that it doesn't have to be that way, but you have to be ready to reclaim your power, literally and figuratively. If you don't, those defense mechanisms are going to continue to run the show and make you behave in a way that is not serving you anymore. ADHD challenges with money won't automatically or magically disappear, but money isn't going to magnify them or not as much. That's the importance of knowing and understanding why money triggers ADHD shutdown. If this is already putting words on something you've felt but couldn't quite name it, share this episode with someone who might need it, and make sure that you stay connected with those conversations by hitting follow or subscribe. Now, I want you to take a moment to think about all the reasons you believe you're bad with money. What stories come up automatically? I can't be trusted. I always mess this up. I should be better by now. Everyone else seems to get this except me. Money rarely stays about numbers. For an ADHD brain, it very quickly turns into a conclusion about who you are. Mistakes don't feel like mistakes. They feel like proof. Proof that you're irresponsible. Proof that nothing has changed. Proof that this is just how you are with money. And once a belief is there, it starts collecting evidence to support it. Here's what makes this even harder. When money shows up, it doesn't arrive alone. It brings deadlines, decisions, emotions, memories, and expectations. For an ADHD brain, that is a lot to hold. Working memory gets overloaded. The brain can't organize, prioritize, or sequence what the next step is, or what the next action is, or what the next task is. So I'll deal with it later feels like the best option, not because you don't care, not because you're lazy, but because it's too much for your brain to handle, and it shuts down. This is where the story usually takes over. This proves I'm bad with money feels incredibly convincing, especially in January when you've seen the numbers, you remember December, the spending, the promises you made to yourself. So the conclusion feels obvious. And once that story is there and plays on repeat, shame steps in. What you can do instead of seeing the story as a conclusion is to try to see it as an interesting point of view. The ways ADHD challenges show up through money don't prove you're bad with money. Seeing the story as an interesting angle to interpret what has been triggered will allow you to shift from something you believe is true about yourself when it's not, to something that points to the only thing that the story proves, and that is how ADHD makes things harder for you, period. And those ADHD challenges that show up through money is something that can be improved with systems that work with your brain, not against it. So instead of asking, what's wrong with me? Or why does everyone else seem to get this except me? Let's ask a different question. What is this moment activating or triggering? For a lot of ADHDers, money triggers things like the belief that this proves you will never get it right, past mistakes replaying in fast forward, a brain that can't prioritize or sequence, too many decisions at once, a need to escape the moment as fast as possible. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. January is the moment where this collision becomes impossible to ignore. Coming back from a vacation is another one. You might open your bank app to check your credit card balance, or more likely avoid it until you can't anymore. And another belief shows up in the background. I should know better by now. January and the end of a vacation are not the cause. They're the moments where everything converges. This shows up everywhere because the same money response can be triggered by bank app notifications, bills or due dates, late payment notices, taxes, unexpected expenses, conversations with partners, debt totals. Different triggers, same nervous system response. And this is why working with money matters more than you think. There's a saying that goes something like this: how you do money is how you do everything. Using money as a lever to tackle several ADHD challenges means you're working on a much larger spectrum to make navigating life with ADHD easier. What improves in that area can be applied to others: work, family, relationships, friendships. Addressing ADHD challenges through money, using it as a leverage, creates a positive ripple effect because money spills over to time blindness, difficulty following through. I'll deal with it later. Time suddenly feels tighter. Deadlines feel heavier, and I'll deal with it later stops feeling neutral and starts feeling like a failure. Money also collides with task initiation, organization, and planning. You know what you need to do, but starting feels impossible. You might not know where to start, and or the task already feels heavy before you even did anything. Money can crank up decision fatigue, trigger rumination, and push the ADHD brain into a black and white mode where nuance disappears and self-judgment takes over. You're not bad with money, you're responding to overload. So removing shame changes how everything else unfolds. Understanding how money triggers these challenges doesn't just change your relationship with money and your finances. It changes how you relate to your brain. So if you're curious about how these money triggers show up specifically for you, I created an ADHD and money questionnaire. This is not about fixing anything. It's about awareness and insight, and you will find the link in the show notes or description. Now, here's what I want you to take from this. Number one, name the trigger before you touch the task. Pause and ask, what is this moment activating or triggering? You don't need to do anything, just name it. Number two, shrink the decision field. That means you don't ask, what should I do? You ask, what's the smallest next thing or the smallest next step? Question the belief to get unstuck. Notice the belief or self-talk that shows up automatically. Then pause and ask, what can I replace this familiar story with that is more empowering and helps me move forward? 4, don't solve money when your nervous system is activated. Regulate first. Decisions comes after the body settles. And this is actually one of the keys, regulate the nervous system, that I share in my free coaching from financial fog to money momentum. And I have put the link to that in the show notes or description. 5, build clarity before consistency. You don't need to change all your habits. You need less friction and more understanding, not more judgment and self-criticism. And always keep in mind that you are not broken, you are not alone, and you don't have to do this the hard way. I sincerely hope this episode helped you see yourself differently. Let me know in the comments. I love reading you. Remember to share this with an ADHDer that might need to hear this conversation, and make sure to follow or subscribe so we can keep rewriting the ADHD narrative together. Thank you for spending this time with me. I truly appreciate you. Until next time, keep rocking that badass and phenomenal ADHD brilliance of yours. Sending lots of love your way, and we'll catch you in the next episode.